Buccaneers rookies that you think are most vital to Tampa Bay's 2025 success.
This is going to be a fun little exercise here, a little top 3 for us. And there actually might be 4 on this list. I'm going to pre-warn you here.
cheating a little,
I'm cheating a little bit. You'll obviously understand why when I get to the point. But let's start with number 3. Let's start with our first pick of the draft, number 19th off the board, Emeka Egbuka. And you're saying, why is he number 3 for us? Well, obviously, we have Chris Godwin, who's coming back from injury, and Mike Evans is the perfect 1-2 combination in football. One guy's down the field threat. He's 1,000-yard receiver perennially. And then you have one of the best utility players in all of football in Chris Godwin, assuming he gets back to his level. And then you obviously have the rookie from last year. So Emeka, to me, he gets to ease into his role here. But that being said, you can't overlook what this guy did in college. Now, when I was going back and looking at him after we drafted him a couple weeks ago, I realized Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba all were drafted top 20 out of Ohio State, and he played with all of them. Okay, he was mostly a slot guy, right? That's you start categorizing where he's going to fit and how he's going to fit into this Bucs team. He's a slot receiver. That's exactly where he played most of his snaps. Now, all-time leading receiver, it's right here on your graphic in Ohio State history, second in yards. It's a three-time All-Big Ten selection. Like, the guy was adorned. I think he was if I'm not mistaken, I think he was a top 2 or 3 high 5-star recruit coming out across the whole nation. Like, he's one of the most coveted players coming out of high school, and that just continued in college. And he did it well for a long time, and most importantly, avoided injury. But I have him 3 on my list just because of those 2 guys that are in front of him. I don't think he's going to be the immediate impact guy like Jacksonville had last year, and the receiver from LSU. I'm blanking on his name right now, Thompson. So he's savvy. He knows how to run routes. He's strong. He's the one thing that I keep hearing when I go over to One Buck Plays is just how sharp this kid is, how quickly he's picking everything up, right? So maybe he can be a utility guy. Maybe he can play some snaps outside and take some of those X and Z snaps. And he's probably at this point, just because of Chris's age, a little bit more explosive of a guy. They're built pretty much similar, but I think he has a chance to contribute. But he's not going to be a guy that's just a day 1 starter. Moving on, number 2. All right. Mm-hmm. Now this is where I get a little convoluted here, because for the first time in a long time, we drafted 2 corners a round apart. So we got a second and a third round corner. Obviously, second round pick was Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. And our third round pick was Jacob Parish out of Kansas State. Now, Benjamin Moore, I'm going to put him as 2B on this list, and I'm going to tell you why. He's coming off an injury, a labor hip injury, which he had also in high school. He had a shoulder surgery last year. He didn't play a lot of games last year is what I'm saying. As a freshman, he was freshman All-American, 6 interceptions. He was one of the most dynamic early evolving corners in football. And then obviously he had the injury last year, and his production was a little bit less the year before. But he's an outside corner. He's mostly an outside-only corner, where we have Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum already, and pretty much settled in as our starters. Now, could that change in the preseason? Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I'm excited about these next 2, is because if there's one position where I think we need competition, it's at corner for this Bucs defense.
So is that a little bit of the reason why you think the Bucs went back-to-back corners to 100%. Create some competition, even though Morrison was slated by many to have first-round talent?
Yeah,
and
he would have if he wouldn't have been hurt. Now, 2A on my list here is Jacob Parish, and he's third round pick, and he's atypical of every other Bucs corner on the roster, which I love. I love it because, Jamel Dean's 6'2", Zion's 6'1" or whatever, 6'1.5". Benjamin is 6 foot.
Is Jacob the Rondé of the draft class?
Yes, Jacob's the Rondé of the draft class. If we can say that, he is 5'10", 190 pounds or whatever he is, but he has something that I desperately did not have, which is 4.35 speed. He's the fastest DB in the draft this year. He was very productive. And when you talked about why they went out and got 2 corners, I think they were thinking exactly as the rest of us are thinking watching Bucs football, that we need more production out of our secondary. We need interceptions. We need takeaways. And I like his tape. The reason I put him at 2A is because I like his tape, and because he's not coming off an injury, I think he's the more immediate contributor, if you ask me. In college, he played outside, transitioned to inside, very Rondé Barber-like, if you will. I'm not putting that comparison on him because you don't want that comparison.
Well, I already made the comparison, so I already teed you up for that.
Right, I'm knocking you off of that comparison, but he played outside and inside, which is an asset. Now, the Bucs, as you know, Todd Bowles likes to play, safeties in there, and primarily because they can tackle. You play in this defense, you're asked to do a whole lot of things at the nickel or star position. The one thing that differentiates this kid from some other smaller DBs is his ability to tackle. He is not only willing but effective tackler, especially in the open field. So he's I heard somebody describe him as short but not small, right? I was like,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a perfect description for this guy because he's a great open field tackler. Like, he's not scared to put his chest on people and bring big people to the ground. And I feel like his confidence, not only playing in pass coverage, but in run defense, makes this guy, I think, one of our really, really impactful early rookies. And I can't wait. Obviously, we're talking about in shorts and stickers on your helmet right now, like just so people know what your name is.
But you're hearing insight at One Buck Place. You're hearing some things.
I'm creating some insight in there. I'm asking questions about. Who is going to be what and how what can I expect? I mean, obviously, once Bucs preseason starts and we showcase it here on WFLA with me and Chris Myers, shameful
shout
plug.
out to Chris Myers.
Shameful plug. Once we start getting to that area, and I've watched a lot of real training camp practices, then you start to know who can handle what. Then that leads us to our number 1 impact rookie, and you might not believe this, but it is David Walker. Now, David Walker is an edge guy, right? 4th round pick, and I didn't know anything about him until we picked him, right? And then you go and look at what he did. You can look at his accolades right here: 39 sacks, 82 tackles for 82 and a half tackles for loss, right? Buck Buchanan Award, right? Look at that second
and again
bullet point.
Another FCS import for Jason Light.
Right. But look at that bullet point, that 2024 Buck Buchanan Award, right? First team All-American. 3 years in a row. Not just last year. He was 3 years in a row the best defensive player in FCS. The scouting report here is just indicative of him playing at a football championship series level. But when you put the film on, you're like, holy cow! This dude has this mentality, this kind of like doggish underdog mentality that makes people respect him. So
this is your number one
impact rookie,
vital rookie to Tampa Bay's 2025 success.
We obviously have Yaya Diaby. We went out and got Hassan Reddick in free agency. Joe Tryon is gone. We need edge pressure. We're going to talk about a guy later in this show that changed our defense, and I'm not making that comparison, certainly, to Dave Walker. But when the Bucs got really good when I was playing, it's because we went out and got Simeon Rice, and we dominated teams after that because of the pressure generated from the edge of our D line. We need somebody to do that. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on him, but I'm telling you, David Walker looks like a guy that could do that. Now, he's undersized, right? He's only 6'1". I think he's 270 pounds or so. But I would not be surprised if he's a breakout star. A lot of people around football talk about this kid, and he had an unbelievable Senior Bowl when he went. And I think that's where he kind of jumped on some people's radar. And because of the stature of the school he played in, it's kind of where he went into the draft. Also, he's 25 years old, man. He's been around. He's not a kid. Like, he's ready to play. And I think he's the guy that I'm most expecting to impact our Bucs team, especially on defense this year.